I'm Carol Kelso, Thomasville Today, CNS Next, with the illustrious author and anesthesiologist, Dr. Chip Bragg. We are so excited to hear about your latest book. Welcome.
Thank you, Carol. I'm happy to be here.
We have talked probably for over an hour this morning, and I can't even narrow down where we're going. I cannot imagine 600 plus pages. Tell us how this all came to be. A Century of Healing.
A Century of Healing. We're now celebrating the centennial of the John D. Archbold Memorial Hospital. About 5.5 years ago, the powers that be at the hospital decided that in anticipation of the centennial, they wanted to have a book published on the history of the hospital. And they thought that I would be the obvious person to work on this project because I had published 5 previous books on history. Certainly not local Thomasville history or hospital history, but
and certainly not of this magnitude.
Not at all. So I was approached in 2019 to do this project, and I thought about it for 5, maybe 10 minutes, and then said no. I had just retired. I anticipated that it would be a very large project. I knew that I become obsessive when I get on a project like this. I had just retired and was enjoying spare time for the first time in my life, and didn't want to let go of that.
But there was a pivotal moment.
There was a pivotal moment, and as your viewers will all remember, in 2020 we had the COVID-19 pandemic. And during the pandemic, I found that the most interesting part of my day was taking my dog for a walk. And I needed something to occupy my mind, and I started thinking about this project, and it just happened again that in November of 2020, Van Middleton, the president of the Archbold Foundation, who had approached me the first time over this, approached me again to see if I had possibly changed my mind.
Clever, very clever.
And I told him that I had, and that I was willing and ready to take on this project.
Did you have any idea?
I did not, because at the time I had only been peripherally interested in the hospital history. I knew that Archbold was almost 100 years old. That was pretty much the extent of my knowledge. I was not aware of the wealth of material that would be available to me to sort out the history and get it written down.
And not only the wealth of the material, but the wealth of John D. Archbold, or Jack Archbold. So tell our community a little bit of how Mr. Archbold put all this together.
Well, he was a oil man. His father, John D. Archbold, who he subsequently named the hospital after, was vice president and then president of Standard Oil. And for reasons that are not entirely clear, but we think are health related, John F. Archbold, John Foster Archbold, decided to retire somewhere in the South. And he originally went down to South Florida and looked around, but on his way back home, he kept a promise to visit Thomasville.
How about that?
And
now, had his dad visited here?
No,
Okay.
No Archbold had ever been here up to this time. He had a chance meeting with a man named Seaborn Roddenberry, who at various times was our mayor and was our U.S. representative. And they met on a train coming south, and at Jessup, Roddenberry got off and came west home to Thomasville, and Jack Archbold kept going south, but not before promising Roddenberry that he would come to Thomasville on his way home.
So that chance meeting on a train.
So Jack Archbold kept that promise. Seaborn Roddenberry showed him around, and introduced him to all the right people, and then took him to dinner at his fish camp on the Ochlockonee River that he called Chinkapin.
Aha.
And Jack Archbold, after being there a bit, said, I think I'd really like to move to Thomasville, but only if I can acquire this property for my home. And so Seaborn Roddenberry sold him the property, which
I did
became
not know that. How about that?
Chinkapin, yeah. And that was all about 1910, 1911.
Okay. I like what you said earlier, that in spite or despite his wealth, he was very inclusive of all walks of life.
Yeah, he was really quite an interesting gentleman. Very, very well educated, went to Yale, very busy in the oil business. But when he came down here, unlike many of the so-called winter residents, the northern industrialists who came down and bought plantations,
Right.
he assimilated himself into the community more than any others. He made very, very close friends here. He joined Rotary.
How about that?
He was a member of Glenarvan Country Club. He allowed the Girl Scouts to build a Girl Scout camp on the Chinkapin property,
Wow.
which persisted until the 1940s. And he was frequently holding events out at Chinkapin to benefit the I don't want to say poor children, but the children who didn't quite have the resources.
So what do you think captured his motivation and his interest to build a hospital?
I think that building a hospital was on his mind as a way to honor his father, who had passed away in 1916.
Okay.
And there's not really strong documentation about what his plans were or what his options were. We think that he was considering either building a hospital in New York or here, but he just had not really made up his mind.
Well, you can't help but fall in love with the beauty surrounding us in Thomas County, but the people.
And it was the people, I think, that ultimately was the deciding factor. As I mentioned to you in our earlier conversation, he was spending more and more time in Thomasville than up north, assimilating himself into the community, and he made very close friends here. And when these friends got wind that he was thinking about building a hospital somewhere and that he was considering Thomasville, but was concerned about stepping on toes or offending
That's very rare.
anyone. Yeah,
Wow.
he was a really good guy. And his friends went out to Chinkapin and convinced him that no, they would not be upset or offended if he were to build a hospital here in town. And they all got behind it 100%.
So how many beds was the first hospital? And did it face Gordon or?
So the original hospital was about 100 beds.
That's big.
It is big, especially for the time. And bear in mind that it replaced a hospital on the corner of Gordon and Hansel that was 40 beds, fully state-of-the-art, fully accredited, and but just too small. Mm-hmm. So 100 beds, it was by far the largest hospital in the region. It's hard to imagine now, but it fronted on Gordon Avenue. In the 1950s, they started building the West Wing, and then in the 1980s, the Ambulatory Surgery Center, which completely obliterated any view you would have from Gordon Avenue. But it was built in the Mediterranean revival style and was really quite beautiful.
Still is.
Still is.
Even ongoing.
In the 50s, when they built the West Wing of concrete and steel, the Board of Trustees was so appalled by the way it looked that they decided that from that point onward, any further additions to the hospital would mimic the Mediterranean revival style, which is why we have the stucco and the clay tile roofs.
Right, it's quite a surprise, I'm sure, for visitors when they go, wait, that's a hospital?
Yeah.
Very, very well done. I like what you said, that I can't imagine the amount of work. It's a tome. It's just huge. And so you scanned newspapers. You read every single Board of Trustees meeting. Is that right?
There was 100 years. Well, there wasn't quite 100 years. There was about 98 years. But the current Board of Trustees would keep me. As soon as their minutes came out, I would get a copy.
And then microfilm and
microfilm. One thing, I don't think in the history of this hospital anybody had ever thrown away a piece of paper, and they had all been in storage. And when I requested that all of that material be moved over to an office that was loaned to me in the Steierman House at the Archbold Foundation.
how many trucks?
It took. I wasn't there, but if you saw the room, it took a lot.
Amazing. And we talked earlier, after you had retired, you were even on a cruise ship, and you were
working on that.
Working on that.
Yeah. The friends that I travel with, they just got used to me disappearing for a couple of hours during the day.
Yeah, you said, not regarding the cruise, but what, 5 to 6 hours a day?
On average, yes.
For 2 years?
I would be, for 4.
4 years.
Yeah, I would be real productive, say from 7 to 11, and then use the afternoon to get other stuff done.
Sure.
And then eat a delicious dinner prepared by my lovely wife,
She
Kim.
is.
And then,
Good for her.
And then I would go sit back down for a couple of hours and work till about 9 o'clock.
So she was a widow, a book widow.
she was. But she was used to that.
Now, how did you keep from going down all the rabbit holes? I want you to read some of the chapter titles, and maybe people can get an idea of the rabbit holes
You've got when you're talking about building a hospital, you're going to have the standard titles of chapters, modernizing the hospital, for example. But some of the more unusual titles are, they were the stuff of legends, talking about the doctors that practiced in Thomasville. Dr. McIntosh, for example, a vigorous, healthy boy who has outgrown all his clothes.
Is that a person?
No, that's the hospital.
Oh.
He was this was talking about the need for expansion. We cannot transfuse excuses.
Ooh,
that
would be a good one.
That was a chapter about the difficulty of blood banking at the hospital and having enough blood donations. Bringing the luck of the Irish.
That's Finland.
When Pat Finland got here.
He wore green, didn't he? Every St. Patrick's Day.
He did. Let's see. Where's the one I wanted to read you?
What's it? I'm sure you've got some teasers in there.
I felt like I had stepped on a frog.
Oh, that's a good teaser. Now,
okay,
are you going to develop that for us, or do we have to get the book?
That was Charlie Watt and snake bites. He described he was walking, and he felt like he had stepped on a frog, and he looked down, and it wasn't a frog at all.
No.
And then,
I vaguely remember that.
And then there's a chapter on the basis of race, color, or national origin.
That would be a good
Which
read.
covers segregation, integration, all the changes that went on there.
Now, you said you took a threefold approach. Could you unpack that a little bit for us of your investigate? I mean, you're basically an investigative journalist.
Well, so I really had very rich resources to draw from. As you mentioned, I had 100 years of board minutes. The newspapers now in today's world are very nicely archived online and are keyword searchable. So I really very closely went through most of the years of newspaper.
So it goes all the way back.
It
to
goes
the
goes
1900s?
back to the 1875,
Wow.
1876.
Okay.
And then, of course, we had a lady named Emily Jerger who worked at the hospital for about 40 years, and she had written a very nice 50-year history, and I had the benefit
Oh, that was helpful.
of all of her research and files, and incidentally, she just had gorgeous handwriting. I mentioned that in the book.
Very helpful.
Then, yeah, I just had.
And you had auxiliary scrapbooks?
Auxiliary scrapbooks were vital to my work.
Absolutely.
Because there came a point in time where there was a gap between when newspapers were digitized, then the gap, and then when they were started to be digitized again, and the hospital auxiliary scrapbooks with their newspaper clippings nicely filled in that
Perfect.
gap. I would probably still be
Yep.
reading old newspapers,
You would.
and if that hadn't been the case.
All right, that's a 600-plus page book, 4 years of research, all kinds of areas where you went to locate all the facts. But it's chipped. It's from what I've vaguely read, skimmed. It's really more than just facts. It's a very readable, very accurate information, but just readable to the common mind.
Well, thank you. What I tried to accomplish, and I believe I did, was to intersperse interesting, quirky things with the construction parts. I mean, when you're talking about building a hospital over a period of 100 years, there are just times where you've got to talk about brick and mortar
Right.
things. But really, the hospital is way more than brick and mortar. It's really the people.
It's the people.
It's the people who have staffed it, whether it be doctors, nurses, administrators, all the many allied health people. You know, the hospital wouldn't run without somebody to push the patients around, deliver the food, and sweep the floors, and do the laundry.
Right.
Those people were every bit as vital. And while I may not tell stories about the people who weren't necessarily in the public eye or in the documentation, I do mention them in the preface of the book and how important they were.
Very important. There's also, we won't talk about it, but Judy the Chimp. So you have
Judy the Chimp.
she in there a little bit?
She is.
See, that just makes it so readable. You want to skip ahead and...
To give your viewers a little teaser, when I was working on this project, someone came up to me and said, "Oh, I guess you're going to have the monkey in there, aren't you?" And what? What are you talking
Is that
about?
an acronym for something? Yeah.
And after doing some research, I can just say that I have covered Judy the bowling chimpanzee. And the reader will just have to read the book
Right, and we're gonna
to
leave it
find
right
out
there.
more about that. But there's all about Judy, and there's even a really good picture of Judy.
There are pictures, so that's good. Where can we purchase the book? Are you giving lectures or?
So the book is available at the hospital gift shop.
Okay.
But since most people aren't going to want to go park in the hospital parking lot and do all the things you have to do to get
Right,
there,
to get even-
we
get
also have it available at the bookshelf
Perfect.
and at the gift shop at the Thomasville History Center.
Perfect.
And if you happen to catch me roundabout town, I've usually got a box or two of them in the back
I bet you do.
back of my truck.
Who puts that box in your car? The book alone is
A box,
quite weighty.
5 books in a box weighs almost 45 pounds.
I got to hold it for a
Yeah.
moment.
And then
There's a lecture coming
There's
up?
a lecture on June 24th
Okay.
at 6 p.m. at the hospital. Come at 5:30 for dinner, which is free. This is the second time I've given this talk.
Oh, okay.
The first time there was such demand for it, and so many disappointed folks that couldn't attend because it filled up so fast, that the Archbold marketing department readily decided to hold it again. And so I would say to the viewership out there to call Archbold Marketing and RSVP, because this one's already filling up.
How about that? Free dinner,
Free dinner,
free lecture.
free lecture. Books will be
condense it for us.
and
Books
books will be
available.
available.
For sale.
Let me just, if I've got one more minute
Sure.
to say that this was a very expensive book to produce. I won't tell you how much because I'm a little embarrassed. We used the best paper, the best binding, but because of the community's generous underwriting, we're able to price this book at $49.95 because we wanted anybody who wanted one to be able to get one.
Good. Well, we are certainly looking forward to that, and thank you so much. It's been very intriguing and interesting, and just it's a very readable book, and we are so grateful for all of your hard work. And
Well, thank
you
you.
not just only have the history of Archbold, but a lot of Thomas County and a lot of Thomasville and the people that made this possible. Thank you for all of your hard work.
Well, thank you
and
very much.
investigation.
I enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much for watching. What a great book. I hope you'll be able to get a copy and maybe even attend the lecture. And we just never know where we're going to be or what we will be doing. But like always, it will be good.